Now it's Coronation Week. No, I'm not going to court. I'm wearing my union tie. I've got my union lapel badge. I'm very excited about the coronation. Some of you are, some of you aren't. One man who hopefully is very excited about the coronation is Rupert Bell, TalkRadio's royal correspondent. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David. Nice to actually be talking to you in the flesh, as opposed from on a Sunday down the line from
Indeed,
my rural
I was going to
little...
say you actually exist.
Well, it's good to know. Yeah, it feels like World Cup week, you know. If I don't know, I was being a bit flippant, but you know, if in my job, it's clearly, it's for everyone. I think it is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Bearing in mind the last one was 70-odd years ago, we're now getting a chance to experience it on a different scale to what it was in '53. But I still think it's going to be a good show put on by GB PLC.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because Julian was being a bit poo-pooing of the whole thing this morning. I didn't feel you'd bought into the whole thing.
No, I do, but I just know the British public, sometimes it has to be the day before, doesn't it, before people get into the swing of it.
Well, that was the big debate in the Platinum Jubilee. They just didn't know what it was in terms of the response from the crowd, and they were taken aback by it in the end, by the sheer scale of that. And as Prince Charles said when it came to his... Because there was a very good documentary about him on the TV last night. He said when he just hopes the weather's nice, basically. Then he knows people will turn up.
Well, absolutely, and I've been looking at the weather because it looked a bit rubbish to begin with, and I don't know whether it's improved. But that is the key to this. And actually, when I was working in A&E, we used to say rain is the best policeman if you had trouble, because, of course, people then tend to go home when it's wet. So what we need is a nice, not too hot, because obviously you don't want people to get heat stroke, but you want a nice day.
Hang on, it's been pretty... It's not, no one's going to... Well, if you get a heat stroke, basically, you are not used to any sort of heat, because spring doesn't seem to have sprung yet. So
no, indeed, your potatoes are in trouble.
Well, we're not talking about my gardening issues here. We're talking about my supposedly my knowledge of the royal family.
Well,
but my potatoes were planted yesterday.
Well, I'm delighted. Now, just in terms of Prince Harry, so I love this. We spoke over the weekend about the courtiers not actually knowing, was he coming, not coming, was he happy where he's sitting? Apparently he is coming. He's going to be here for about 4 hours. That's good of him.
Well, yes, he wants to get back for Archie's birthday. And you keep reading the sort of bits of royal tittle-tattle, I think, of suggesting that he's making it difficult to tell him where he's going to be, what he wants, what he thinks of his seating plan. He's not answering emails. I think that's all a bit of sort of speculation. Look, he's coming in, he's going to see his father be crowned, and then he just wants to hot-foot it out of there as quickly as possible. Because, in a way, for the sake, the less he's here, the better in many ways, because then he won't become the story, except for a little time around the coronation, because then once we move on to the Sunday and all the other stuff that's going on, the concert, and then the sort of bank holiday day week, he will not be part of the story anymore.
I mean, I did grimace because Meghan Markle's appeared in the press again this morning. Her father now has said his estranged daughter has killed me and mourned me. And I'm like, you're in the States, stop talking.
Well, this family was speaking, so there was a documentary in Australia, so to some extent they've picked a moment, an obvious moment but I think at the heart of that, it's a cry, cri de coeur in many ways from Thomas Markle to say, we've made mistakes, but let's try. I'm an ill man. Let's try and get back together again. Because clearly from that documentary, you can see that her father did spend a lot of time bringing her up and very close to her. So I think that's the sad thing there, is that you look at Meghan Markle, you think, well, Harry's now, before he married Meghan, was very close to his family. And then you think, well, not now. And then you look at Meghan, she's not close to her family. Now, there is a common denominator, and that is sad, that actually now they are in almost isolation in Montecito from their family, apart from 1 or 2 very loyal members. And that's the same with Harry, perhaps with Beatrice and Eugenie are sounding boards for him. And then, obviously, in Meghan's case, her mother. And you think, well, this is sad.
It is.
Because Meghan really should be supporting, excuse me, her husband, seeing her father-in-law, achieve something. He's waited 73. He was 70. What was he? 3 when his mother came to the throne. He's 74, so that makes
over
73.
Yeah.
Over 70.
It's a long way.
It is a long way. I mean, look, I said this to you over the weekend. I'm delighted Harry's coming. I think it's really important. I think his father is very pleased about the whole thing. Just in terms of the pledging the allegiance, we talked about this yesterday. So there are a lot of breaks with ceremony. You and I had a little text message conversation last night, and so we're now going through the finer details of what is happening at the coronation. Now, some of it is incredibly traditional, and it dates back, I mean, centuries, which I love. I love all of that. The King's decided to mix things up a bit. This pledging the allegiance, which we talked about yesterday, this morning Lambeth Palace is sort of rowing back after they were called Orwellian.
Well, yes, because some people are saying asked, and instead they've invited. Now, that's a technically invited is a different thing. Ask has an element, we're asking you. You know, you can put it like that. Inviting, that's up to you. You can either say yes or no. What I think will happen is that if you're going to watch it on a big screen, you're probably mindful of anyway doing that. If you're not going to go and stand with lots of other people watching it or wherever you are and they're showing it, you probably aren't going to do it anyway. So I think sometimes it's like when we have the 2-minute silence. Sometimes you're in the right place to do it if you want to do it. If not, you just carry on with your life. And I think it's a modern way of trying to include, but inviting is a very different way.
So it was clumsy language. And actually, you're right. I looked back at the headline yesterday and it says ask. And then today it's to invite. So they've obviously nuanced that.
I think it came out as an invited, but then someone's, a headline guy's just said, well, ask, and before you know it, you've got an opinion, and that's sometimes why it happens. But I think it is interesting that, people will be watching around televisions or whatever, and, maybe it is a way that you can feel included in it if you're so minded.
So will you pledge allegiance?
Well, I was in the army, so I pledged my...
You did?
I pledged my allegiance anyway to the crown.
I can't see Julian do it.
Is it allegiance to the whole royal family or just...
No, the king.
The king.
Okay, because people are saying, what about Andrew? What about
No,
Aaron?
it's
No.
It's to the monarch.
It's the
Right.
You're pledging allegiance to the institution.
Right.
And it's a very different thing. So, and this is one of the, it's the institution of the monarchy, not necessarily the individuals. And that's, if you think, from 1066, not every king has been beloved by his
Quite the contrary.
Quite the contrary. Yeah. And actually, when you think about it now, so it's the institution, and you serve... he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and so you are serving and pledging allegiance to the institution, not necessarily the individual.
I just think it's a very odd thing to put out there, because actually all that I think it does is stir up Republicans going, well, actually, this is ridiculous.
Well, yes, and Republicans will think, I'm not doing that. But actually, if you are a British citizen, you have to work out, well, what does that mean to you? And that, obviously, is a far wider debate and way outside my pay grade.
And also, Julian, you were telling us about the billion reasons to be thankful for the coronation.
Supposedly, yes. So this boost to the economy, according to the trade body UK Hospitality, mainly alcohol. People in pubs.
I mean, Rupert, what about this? 62 million pints are going to be drunk.
Well, hang on. Every time I go to Cheltenham Festival, one puts out a survey. 100 million to the Gloucestershire community. Drink is part of the issue. Now, excuse me. Actually, there's an interesting statistic. Now, if I get my maths right, a bit like Charles, I failed my maths O-level so many times. The King says in his documentary it took him 4 times before he got it. So we share something in common.
Right.
So, back in 1953, the GDP, it was 0.0009% of GDP what it cost.
Right.
This one is costing 0.0004% of the GDP.
That's a good fact. But that's the point when people say, well, it's going to cost whatever it is, X number of millions. But the point is actually in terms of regenerating the pubs, the hospitality, people actually having a nice time, the supermarkets, the bunting, all the rest of it.
That's what it was designed for in 53.
Is that right?
Spoke to basically to bring the country out of a post-war era and a sort of rebirth. Not sure it's going to be in that situation here, but what it does show, and as I spoke to a Frenchman on Saturday night, we Brits know how to put on this properly, and that the world will be looking at it, because no one else does pomp and ceremony like us. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it still will be a spectacular-looking show.
We haven't planned it for as long as 53 it went on. I mean, in The Crown, I don't know if it's the case.
Is that where you get your historical references?
Well, Churchill wanted to continue as Prime Minister, so he extended the planning. I mean, this has been planned in half the time.
Well, yeah, and I know organisers were absolutely terrified at the short space of time to do this.
I'm sure.
Because suddenly to bring everything in together, it is a completely different... and it's been a race against time. And that's why some of the rehearsals, it's been a bit frenetic. You know, they were on an airfield yesterday, marching and practising with a minibus, replicating the Golden State coach.
Is that right?
Yeah, no,
I love that.
There was a brown minibus, and basically there was two people in high-vis jackets representing the Queen and the King. So I mean,
I'd watch that.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah,
so I mean, it's that's one for the people. That's probably, but obviously, and I'm told the service men and women are not having to wear their marching boots because they're doing a lot of practising just to preserve their feet.
I'm sure.
But I'll tell you the level of detail, and I told you yesterday, is when we have the street lining, instead of people being an arm's distance, as they were last time, it's 5 paces this time because we don't have as many service personnel to fulfil the duties.
So interesting.